All right, the last answer got cut off. The letter F should end up getting negative radical 3 over 3. All right, number 9. These are problems we cannot just do in the calculator. We have to find, again, the exact values. We don't want decimals, rounded decimals as answer. We want exact values for all 6 trig functions where the terminal side of angle theta in standard position passes through the point 2, 4. So essentially, we've got a picture right here. Point 2, 4 is approximately here. We're trying to find, this is our theta right there, this angle right here. So we're trying to find sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, cotangent of this angle, reference angle, right here in the corner. We don't really have to draw a picture because they give us an x value, they give us a y value. You just need to find the r value. Since we know the trig definitions of sine, cosine, and tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent. So x is 2, y is 4, r, we're going to do Pythagorean theorem to find r. And I believe we did some of these problems the other day. End up getting radical 20. Remember, we do not want a decimal approximation, so you don't want to type radical 20 in your calculator because it's not a perfect square. But there is a perfect square that goes into 20. It's a rather small one, but 4 can go into 20, and it goes into 25 times. So we need to simplify this radical for full credit. 4 is a perfect square. It goes into 20. You can use the factor tree if you're comfortable with the factor tree. The radical 4 is 2. So 2 radical 5 is our r value. So now we know x, we know y, we know r. We should be able to find sine theta. Sine theta is y over r. That is a y. Let me write that just a little bit better. You don't have to write the y over r part. But if sine is y over r, that means it is 4 over 2 radical 5. The 4 over 2 reduces to 2 over radical 5, and then rationalize the denominator. So sine of theta in this particular angle is 2 radical 5 over 5. I'll write it to the left of that blank. So that's sine theta. Cosine theta is x over r. So it's going to be a very similar process. It's going to be 2 over 2 radical 5. The 2's cancel, leaving us with a 1 on top and a radical 5 on the bottom. There's cosine theta. Tangent theta is y over x. This is an easy one. It's 4 over 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so it's r over y. You could flip this original problem, but that would probably be more work, than you have to really do, because r is 2 radical 5, y is 4, 2 over 4 reduces to 1/2. So that's cosecant. Secant is r over x. So That means it's 2 radical 5 over 2. 2's cancel, but you don't have to write the 1 because it's at the bottom. Anything divided by 1 is itself, so you get radical 5. And then cotangent is x over y, which is 2 over 4. For full credit, make sure you reduce, make sure you don't have any radicals in the bottom, make sure you've broken down any square roots like radical 20. All right, number 10, similar problem. They give us cosine theta, and they say cosine theta is negative. So cosine theta is negative in 2 quadrants. Cosine theta is negative in this quadrant and this quadrant. So our angle is in one of those 2 quadrants. Again, doesn't matter which really quadrant. Never mind, it does tell us we're in quadrant 3. It tells us in this problem we are in quadrant number 3. So we're looking at this quadrant. So x is negative 5. This cosine is x over r. So x is negative 5. We're trying to find y. R is always positive, it's 13. So we need to do Pythagorean theorem to find y. Here's a mistake a lot of people are making for this particular problem. When you do Pythagorean theorem, guys, you've got to make sure you include these parentheses around negative 5 if you're just typing this in your calculator. You leave off those parentheses, you will miss this question. If you just know this one, you do not have to show the work. So you just know this one. But remember, y can equal 12 or negative 12. Depends which quadrant that this angle is in. Since we're in quadrant number 3, y is equal to a negative number in quadrant 3. So that means we're going to use negative 12 for our y value. If we were in quadrant 2, then we would use positive 12 if we were in quadrant number 2. But we're not. So we're not going to use that. So now these, once you come up with x, y, and r, these 6 trig values should be pretty easy. Sine is y over r. Cosine is x over r. Tangent's y over x. Something you need to study. Make sure you have these trig definitions memorized. You would make sure for full credit you write 12 over 5 for tangent. The negative divided by negative is a positive. And then cosecant's the reciprocal of sine, secant's the reciprocal of cosine, cotangent's the reciprocal of tangent. So there's your answers for number 2. All right, so let's look at number 11. Use a sum or difference formula to find the exact value of cosine of 195. So these formulas are given to you. You do not have to memorize them. But we need 2 angles, either add or subtract together to give us 195. I'm going to take 135 and 60. There's a lot of different ways to solve this problem. You could do 60 plus 135. You could subtract 2 angles. A lot of different ways. But you're going to use the cosine sum formula, which again is provided for you. So just follow the formula. The one place some of you made a mistake on the previous test with these was the cosine plus formula. Look at it carefully. There's actually a subtraction sign for the cosine sum formula. It's not true if it's a sine sum formula. It's just different. So minus sine of 135 times the sine of 60. Sine and cosine, you can all come up with all these values in your calculator. So this cosine of 135, type that in your calculator. That should give you negative radical 2 over 2. Cosine of 60 is positive 1/2 minus the sine of 135 is radical 2 over 2. The sine of 60 is radical 3 over 2. So then we're going to multiply these two fractions together. You just multiply across the top. So negative radical 2 times 1 is negative radical 2. 2 times 2 is 4. I'm going to drop down my subtraction sign down here at the bottom. And then I'm going to multiply these two fractions. Radical multiply across the top, radical 2 times radical 3 is radical 6 over 4. Write your answer with a common denominator. Again, this is something you can check in the calculator to see if you get an equivalent decimal to the cosine of 195. A lot of times that's what I do to check your work if I don't have these formulas on me. If you look at the answer key that's provided, they actually solve this problem using two completely different angles, but they get the same answer. All right, pause if you need to. I'm going to erase the stuff that fell into number 12. All right, number 12, find the exact value of sine alpha minus beta. So first, you want to make sure you come up with the right formula for number 12. Again, these are provided. So this is the formula you're going to use for number 12. All right, so we need to find, we already know sine of alpha, or sine of A, is 3/5. So that's going to go underneath sine of A. So we've got that much. We also know the cosine of beta, or cosine of B, is negative 7/25. So that is going to go underneath the cosine B in the formula that you're using. So we need to find cosine of A and sine of B. So start with alpha, or if we just want to call it A. We know Y and R for A, because we know sine of A, and sine is Y over R. So Y is 3, R is 5. We're going to do Pythagorean theorem to solve for X. X should be a positive number. I'll save the work for you there. You should ultimately get 4 for X, which means we now know the cosine of alpha is X over R, which is 4/5. So that goes underneath the cosine alpha. I'm going to do beta here on the far right. Beta one thing I forgot to check is to see what quadrant we're in. Alpha is in the first quadrant, so everything's positive. We're okay there. But beta is a third quadrant angle. So in the third quadrant, X and Y are both negative in the third quadrant. So it makes sense that X is a negative 7. R is always positive, so it's 25. And we got that because they told us the cosine of B, or the cosine of beta, is negative 7/25. Cosine is X over R. So do Pythagorean theorem to solve for Y. I'm going to set this one up just to remind you, put parentheses around the negative 7. solve this for y, remembering that y is ultimately going to be a negative number. Should get negative 24 for y. So that means the sine of beta is negative 24 over 25. Sine is y over r. And just be careful, again, typing this in your calculator. I would do these two fractions first. 3/5 times negative 7/25. You multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom, or you can just type that straight in your calculator. Math enter to reduce that. So that comes out to be negative 21 over 125. Bring down my subtraction sign, and then I'm going to multiply 4/5 times negative 24/5. End up getting negative 96 over 125. Those negatives negate each other. They cancel each other out, so there's an addition problem. So negative 21 over 125 plus 96 over 25. Don't forget to reduce. Ultimately, this should reduce to 3/5. Math enter to reduce any fraction. All right, we've come to the last one I'm going to do on the video. The others have been done in class, or you can look at the answer key to get answers for 14 and beyond if you weren't here in class that day. For 13, we are going to use the cosine sum formula. So that's cosine A times cosine B minus sine of A times sine of B. So let's figure out what they've given us. They've given us the sine of A. Sine of alpha is negative 8 over 17. I'm going to bring down my subtraction sign as well. They've also given us cosine of B. So the cosine of B is 24 over 25. So that goes underneath the cosine of B. We need to come up with the cosine of A and the sine of B. So let's start with alpha, or A. Determine what we have, x, y, or r. Since they gave us sine, that means we know y is negative 8, r is positive 17. Alpha is a third quadrant angle. So that means this is the third quadrant. So that means both x and y are ultimately going to be negative when we come up with these solutions. So do Pythagorean theorem, remembering to put negative 8 in parentheses. Solve for x. Pause it if you need to see if you can get negative 15, but you should have gotten negative 15 for x. Erase everything down here. So now that we know that cosine for A, x equals negative 15, we now know that cosine of A is x over r, so it's negative 15 over 17. And finally for B, repeat the process. B is much nicer. It is a first quadrant angle, so everything is positive in the first quadrant. X is 24. R is 25. Do Pythagorean theorem to solve for y. Should end up being 7. So that means the sine of B is 7 over 25. And then just take your time, multiply these two fractions together. Math enter if they're needed to be reduced. So negative 72 over 85. Multiply these two fractions together. Drop down my subtraction sign. End up getting negative 56 over 425. Again, the double negative cancels out. Just type these in your calculator. Don't worry about getting a common denominator. Just type them in your calculator. So type in negative 72 divided by 85. Add to that 56 divided by 425. Math enter. You will get a big fraction on this one. Negative 304 over 425. So that's your answer. If you've got any further questions, let me know. I'll be after school Thursday, especially for those taking the final exam on Friday. Good luck. And just a reminder, 14 and 15 will not be on the final exam. 14 and 15 you do not have to do. They're not on the final. And then 16 and beyond, we did those in class. But the answer keys should be posted as well.